Now, one of the most common things I've heard or seen said about the recently ended Ahsoka series is that, yeah, it was alright, or there were things about it I liked or that I thought were good, that it had the pieces in place to be a great story, but it missed in some areas or respects or had some issues or other things that kept it from being great, and it could have been much, much better with a few changes. And so what I want to do in this video is make some of those changes. I'm going to take the story we got and modify or tweak it a bit, but for the most part keep it what it was, or maybe I should say keep most of it, the majority of the story beats the same. In other words, this isn't going to be quite like a full rewrite, just my ideas on how the story maybe could have been better. And I want to stress here before I even begin that this is all in good fun. It's not meant to be a slap in the face of Dave Filoni, though I could see why some would interpret it that way. I did a video a couple weeks ago about how I wanted to do more creative videos once again, and this is just meant to be a step in that direction. And so if you're someone who loved the Ahsoka series as it was, I think that's great, I really do. And you can either skip this video and go about your day, or you can watch it nevertheless and tell me if you think this would have made things better or maybe worse. All that said, let's jump right in, and the very first thing I change about Ahsoka, or the Ahsoka series, is the name. Maybe it is just me, but I'm not a fan of every Disney Plus show being named after a single character, like this is the MCU or something. I think they're better off telling broader stories instead of focusing on just one character in them. Not that they usually end up focusing on one character anyway, or on the titular character. And so in this case, and in true Star Wars fashion I feel, or like Lucas used to do it, I'm going to call this show something simple and generic, yet that hopefully piques curiosity and maybe calls back to something. I'm going to call it Dark Force Rising. I'm also going to change the actual opening, not that I think starting with Baylan and Shin liberating Morgan from the New Republic is bad. It kind of harkens back to A New Hope, and I think that may have been a bit of what Dave Filoni was going for here. But I'm going to save that for a little later and open with a flashback/dream sequence that goes back to Rebels, to the Twilight of the Apprentice episode where Vader is fighting Ahsoka. I'm going to, in live action, and you can make it blurry and dreamlike, especially in the case of Ezra, who's going to be in this, and to make the actor who plays him look younger, make it easier to make him look younger, I should say. But I'm going to have just a few seconds really of Vader and Ahsoka fighting in the temple on Malachor from that episode. And then we'll see, as happened in the episode, we'll see Ezra running towards the closing door that Ahsoka ends up pushing him back away from. He then cries out her name, he cries out Ahsoka, and that's what wakes her up from this dream sequence, where we find her on board her Jedi shuttle, and she had fallen asleep in the cockpit at the controls, and they are traveling through hyperspace currently. We'll then see that Huyang is at her side. He'll ask if she had another nightmare about him, and she'll kind of shake her head and say it was once again more about Ezra, that she still feels like he is out there, and that she can't get the promise she made to him out of her head. She can't help but feel like she has failed him, and it's been so long and she still hasn't found him. And why I open this way is because I immediately want to start laying out the dots to be connected between all of these characters, especially for those who don't know these characters. I don't think there is a point in bringing or saving Anakin or Vader for later, other than for it to be this wow moment that we won't need in our story if it is sound from start to end. Plus, this whole story, more or less, is centered around finding Ezra. That is our plot. And the audience needs to, as quickly as possible, they need to know more about him or know how he's connected and start to care about the search for him. We need to get them vested in him right away, which is something the show never does. Not for Ahsoka anyway. We never know, unless you've seen Rebels, if Ahsoka has any sort of personal relationship with Ezra, any sort of personal reason to find him, which if there is, and there indeed is,
when you get back, come and find me.
I will. I promise.
It can be a source of internal conflict for her in the story, a conflict between keeping a promise to a friend and stopping Thrawn's return. But getting back to it, after a bit more between Ahsoka and Huyang, we come out of hyperspace above a planet, and we quickly move down to it, and it's the same planet we got in that first episode, the one where Ahsoka found the map ball thing, whatever you want to call it, and we can once again show her sort of exploring this ancient temple, and cutting her way down into it, and solving a puzzle to unlock the map. But as she's doing that, we will see some kind of skeletal figures that clearly are long since dead, and maybe they wear or were wearing some sort of ancient red battle armor and have cool swords or some kind of weapons. And they're scattered about this room, and as Ahsoka is fiddling with everything to unlock the map, we'll see a small green flame erupt in their empty eye sockets, in the eye sockets of these skeletons, And that flame will consume the whole body, and they will come to life, and they will fight Ahsoka, who is then swarmed by countless numbers of them. But she manages to, of course, grab the map and to escape and be rescued by Huyang just in the nick of time before, again, they all kind of swarm her and finish her off. And my thought process here is let's right away throw some Night Sister magic into this and get that all set up nice and early. I also don't want to use droids here like the show did the HK droids, because I don't want to in any way imply the bad guys that we still haven't been introduced to yet. I don't want them to have any idea that Ahsoka has the map just yet, and that's because I don't want Ahsoka to know or think the bad guys might believe she has the map just yet. I want her thinking Morgan is still locked away in a New Republic cell, and she could have no idea what Ahsoka is up to, that she's trying to find Ezra. We're then back on the ship and flying away from the planet, and after messing with the ball map thing just a little bit, or after using the Force on it, and maybe mentally, we see this sort of fight take place through some sort of vision type thing. I know I'm being very descriptive here, but we see this sort of vision of the Night Sisters, some kind of spirits of the Night Sisters protecting the information within the map. And after a little bit of effort, Ahsoka manages to defeat them, and she gets the information from the map. The map itself kind of springs forth from it. And what the map is again, like kind of in the show, it's this holographic image of, or map of the entire galaxy. And it has these lines, multiple lines going across it, and Ahsoka will, for a little while, stare at these lines, and it almost looks like she recognizes them, or there is something familiar about it. And she'll even say as such, she'll even say something to Huyang like, why do these look like hyperspace lanes, like ones I've seen before? That's when we'll focus in further, or almost entirely on the map, and then we will slowly pull back from it and see that some of the lanes, or some of those lines are now missing that were there before, but many are there and are in the same place. And we'll see that someone else is looking at this almost identical projected map of the galaxy with these lines on it, and that is Sabine Wren. And she too, just like Ahsoka was, she will be in the cockpit of a ship, and outside of it we can see some sort of maybe gas cloud that is full of dozens and dozens of feeding Purrgil, not unlike what we saw out of them in Rebels, where they needed a gas to recharge before they could enter hyperspace and move on to wherever they were going next. Anyway, we'll see Sabine just sort of watching them with a bit of a frown on her face, and she'll mutter something to herself like, come on, let's move on to the next stop already, before she glances at the hollow map once again that she has open up next to her. And we're trying to, of course, imply she's been tracking and mapping the movement of the Purrgil, which, oddly, the Ahsoka series kind of implies Sabine and Ahsoka never did, that they never investigated the Purrgil, even though that's literally your one and only clue to finding Ezra and where you'd logically start your search, right? And I say the show implies Ahsoka and Sabine never did anything with the Purrgil because in the episode Ahsoka first sees them, she's very much giving this look or impression like she is completely awed by them, like she's never seen anything like them before. Also, when she does try to communicate with them later on, it feels like, or seems certain, that she's never tried to communicate with them before to ask them anything. Even though, again, that would be the most logical place to start your search for Ezra, to start with the Purrgil. And so here, what I'm showing is that Sabine has, for years at this point perhaps, she's been tracking the movement of the Purrgil across the galaxy in the hopes of finding Ezra. I want her to, yes, be frustrated at this point in time that she still hasn't found him, but I still want her to be more hopeful and positive, if not a bit sarcastic at times, as the character tends to be in Rebels. And so anyway, as she's sitting there just watching, one of the Purrgil, a larger one, will get really, really close to her ship, so close that we will see this giant eyeball of a Purrgil looking through the viewport right at Sabine. And that's when we'll see her sort of steady her breathing, the music will change just a bit to imply she's about to try to use the Force, and she'll shut her eyes and sort of reach out to the Purrgil, clearly trying to communicate with it. But a few moments later, Chopper, who, yes, will be with Sabine, he rolls into the cockpit and interrupts her, and the Purrgil just kind of moves on. After Sabine scolds him for interrupting, and he'll play innocent, she'll sort of lament the fact that no matter how hard she tries, and no matter what Ahsoka said about her having an attachment or some sort of attunement to the Force, she can't do what Ezra did. She can't communicate with the Purrgil like he could, and how she longs to just ask where they took her friend. And even though I'm not or wasn't a huge fan of the idea of Sabine becoming a Jedi or using the Force, what I want to do here is at least give her a reason to want to become one, which is again something the show never really touches on. and it all seems to only stem from her simply having Ezra's lightsaber, I guess. And so I want to give her an actual motivation to become a Jedi or to learn how to use the Force, and I want that to be a selfish reason, that she's doing it only because she wants to find Ezra, and not because she has any interest in actually being a Jedi and all that it entails. Which was then the reason why Ahsoka stopped training her, which we will find out about later. Next, then we can get our scene of Baylan and Shin liberating Morgan Elsbeth from the New Republic ship, and it can be more or less the same as it was in the show. That's fine, I guess. Where it'll differ a bit is at the end of it, when Morgan and Baylan are talking, we'll now have it where Morgan says it was difficult to resist Ahsoka trying to rip Thrawn's location from her mind, and that in the end she was able to pull fragments of the map's location from her, likely enough to find it soon enough. Though she'll say Ahsoka will also find a surprise from her sisters waiting for her when she does find it. Baylan will then ask why she left it there of all places, at an ancient temple and not somewhere more secure, to which Morgan replies there is no place more secure in her opinion, for there are none more loyal to her or as fierce of protectors than her sisters, who have nothing but time to wait for intruders. Baylan will kind of begrudgingly accept that answer and ask if it ever occurred to her to just make a copy of the map and keep it elsewhere as a sort of backup plan. Morgan will explain that the map is actually much more than simply a map, that traveling across such vast, incredible distances needs to be more precise than any known Navi computer can properly calculate. Plus there are strange dark space or dark matter anomalies or some kind of fun name like that are along the way that need to be accounted for in real time, essentially. That it was only her ancestors studying the Purgil and their magic, the magic of the Night Sisters, that allowed them to create this device that could account for these anomalies. That not even Chiss Skywalkers could pull off such a dangerous trip, referencing something from the newest Thrawn novels in here, which is something I will do quite a bit. Moving along now, I then have a scene where Ahsoka heads to Sabine's location with the Purgil, gladly given to her by Chopper, who was partly loaned to her, to Sabine, by Hera to sort of keep an eye on her, because of this obsession she has with finding Ezra. And we can have this sort of slightly tense reunion between these two, but not quite as tense as it was in the actual series. No use for those long dramatic pauses while they were talking to each other or anything like that. And actually, I mainly want to go for an upbeat feeling here out of both characters. I want Ahsoka, who, realized the Night Sister map she found was very similar, if not almost identical, to the paths of the Purgil, the ones they used to travel the galaxy, thus implying, obviously, the two used to track the Purgil together and had a lot of time to kill on their hands, as they oftentimes had to wait on them to move along. Which is then sort of how the Jedi training began. This is when Ahsoka realized she may have, or Sabine may have, some degree of potential with the Force, and the training began. And Sabine wanted to be trained again to perhaps be able to commune with the Purgil to find Ezra, something Ahsoka had tried and completely failed to do, to commune with them, saying not all Jedi, or all Force users in general, have the same sorts of abilities, and not thinking Sabine would have it, and not entirely realizing Sabine's entire motivation to wanting to be trained in the first place. Anyway, these two have this reunion, and under the impression that Morgan is still locked up and that no active plan to retrieve Thrawn is currently underway, they study the Night Sister map together, these traveling patterns of the Purgil, which for reasons they can't or don't understand, the Night Sisters had apparently mapped out once upon a time in the distant past. And so they pretty quickly figure out that there seems to be a system on the very edge of the galaxy in a remote and perhaps for some reason difficult place to get to. There could be another anomaly or something around the system, but whatever it is, it seems like that place is the final stop, or seems to be the final stop. It's of course a jumping point to the other galaxy that they'll eventually learn about, but it seems to be a final stop for the Purgil. Which of course gets them both excited, because maybe that's where they took Ezra, and since it's so remote, so hard to get to, or to even send a communication to, he's just been stuck there the whole time. Though Ahsoka points out that they must be very cautious, because she's recently heard rumors that Thrawn has or could return. There's only been whispers of it so far, and most of those whispers she has followed up on have been dead ends, other than this one about Morgan Elsbeth, which led to this very map. The two then agree that yes, they should be cautious, but they do want to find a way to this system that they have located on an ancient Night Sister device. They want to find a way to the end of the Purgil line, keeping in mind again, there is a reason it is near impossible to just travel there. And so they agree that they have to go to the New Republic first, and more specifically, to Hera, who may know someone who can help them get through this anomaly. Our next scene would then be a fairly quick one of Morgan, Shin, and Baylan on the planet with the Night Sister Temple, where Morgan would use her magic on one of the skeletal guards, asking it to be allowed to see through your eyes to see what you have seen, and then seeing Ahsoka taking the map, before thanking her sister and asking for her services once more. The skeletal warriors will agree to help, and henceforth these, let's keep calling them skeletal warriors, they will effectively replace Marok in the story. Sabine and Ahsoka make their way to the New Republic fleet to meet with Hera and learn about the liberation of Morgan Elsbeth. Sabine, of course, insists this changes absolutely nothing, but Ahsoka says that not only must they be even more cautious than before, but much like Baylan, she figures Morgan must have a copy of the map, and that this has now turned more into a mission to stop Thrawn than to rescue Ezra, which Sabine doesn't like, but she accepts as long as it still offers her a chance to find Ezra. The three then discuss how to make it through this strange anomaly around the system, and Hera remembers how Zeb once guided them through a similar anomaly, using his bow rifle to do it, to find the hidden planet of Lyrasan. Sabine rather jokingly asks if she thinks Zeb could be of help to them, that he could somehow get them through this anomaly, but it's Ahsoka who speaks up and mentions how, when she first accessed the map, she encountered what can only be described as Night Sister spirits that tried to keep her out, that were guarding it essentially, though she eventually managed to overpower them, but she wondered or almost got the impression that they let her access that part of the map in the end, maybe to keep her from sort of stumbling upon another secret the orb may contain, that maybe there are far more answers within it yet. Ahsoka then tries to access the map again, going even deeper this time, but in the end she gets pushed out by these Night Sister spirits, and fairly easily this time. It looks like they were stronger, or were indeed kind of playing possum with her. Ahsoka then says, rather jokingly, she either needs to somehow grow stronger, or to have some sort of advantage over these Night Sister spirits, that perhaps she could take it to a place where the Force is a bit stronger for her to access. Sabine then suggests the temple on the Thal, or what's left of it, saying how Kanan and Ezra would often go there, and how they would often mention how strong that place was with the Force, and Ahsoka will agree and they will be on their way. Which is then where I'll leave the story for now, especially with my voice starting to fail me, which you might be able to hear. And we're right about at the end of what I would have called the first episode, with one of my main goals here overall being to sort of condense and streamline those first few episodes, maybe turning the first 3 into 2 episodes, and to get more information into them in general, especially for those who don't know these characters or haven't seen the shows they come from. Either way, this gives you an idea of how the start of the show could have been different and perhaps better. That's up for you to decide and to let me know in the comments below. And if you do like this, if people are enjoying this, if this long video gets some decent watch time and lets me know people are actually making it through it to the end, I will certainly continue this story in another video in the very, very near future. But for now, that's going to be all I got for this time. And now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about my version so far. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Or what? Whatever you do think, though, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.